All right, Jenny.
Ready? Okay. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this snowy morning here in Juneau for our School Climate Now session. Before we go any further, just some quick logistics so we're all familiar with how Zoom works. I know I'm on Zoom almost my entire day nowadays for my job, but not everyone is. So if you haven't yet, first I invite you to rename yourself. You can go to your video square and click on the 3 dots and type your name, comma, and your school or district that you are with so we know who is here today. I don't think many of you have your videos on, but we invite you to put your video on if you have the bandwidth. We would love to see your faces, but I understand if you don't have strong enough bandwidth. And at any time during our session this morning, please, if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat box. You can go scroll down to the bottom, click on chat box and type it in, and either Cami or I will respond to you. So with that, I am going to get started. Oh, good morning. Thank you, whoever just showed your video. I'm not sure who you are, but good morning. So for this next hour, I am number one, I want to do a quick gathering activity so we can see who is all here. And so that we're on the same page around what school climate is all about, go do a quick overview. Then we're going to talk about what has school climate been like this past year during COVID-19 and give you a chance to reflect on school climate in your communities and schools. And building from that, a chance to reflect on school-wide practices to build school climate. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. I am Jenni Lefing with the Association of Alaska School Boards. I live in Juneau in Southeast Alaska, and I have been with the Association of Alaska School Boards for now, it's my 10th year in different positions. Currently, I am the school climate coordinator, which I oversee the statewide school climate and connectedness survey in which the majority of school districts take each year. In addition to overseeing that survey, I support schools and communities and how to use that data to support school climate. We really look at the school climate and connectedness survey as a tool, not just a survey, but it's a tool as a starter for school staff and communities and students to have conversations about all the different components of school climate to be able to move the dial. I have a picture here on the screen of myself and my husband, Brock, and my 6-year-old son, Chance. And we at ASB, we've been, when we've been doing sessions, we've been sharing a photo of ourselves because I wanted to just take a step back for a second and acknowledge that this has been such an intense year. And for what has helped me get through this past year is taking every opportunity I can to go camping and get outside. So this is a photo of myself with my family heading out to or being at Blue Mussel Cabin out in Juneau in one of my favorite spots. So for us to get started today, I would love to hear a little bit about you. Number one, if in the chat box, if you can please type your name, your school or district where you're from, what role you play in that district or school. And if you were to share a photo with us today, what would we see in that photo? What is something that you have been doing this past year to take care of yourself? So if you can please put that in the chat box, or if you would rather just share that, you can unmute and share. So please share your name, your district or school, where you're from, what role you play there, and what would we see in your photo of something you have been doing to take care of yourself.
Good morning. I guess I'll go. I'm Margie Kersti. I teach second grade here at Freddie Pollock Elementary School in Barrow, Utqiagvik. I've been here for geez, long time, 22 years, 23.
Great. And what would we see in your photo, Margie?
In my photo, this to make myself survive, and because it's been a challenging year. I work on a lot of crafts, from sewing, making parkas, attic looks, doing a lot of crocheting. I was showing some of my students how to do basket coiling this winter, and
Nice.
right before Christmas, and just doing a lot of craft work, and then also doing some exercise, because we got to get our blood moving up here. It's so cold out. But we're supposed to get our kids back, I think March 1st, after everyone get their second COVID shot up here. So I go in Saturday for mine. And what do you want me to talk about? What do you want to see in my photo?
Yeah, just something that you're doing to take care of yourself during this past year.
Okay. Geez, I'll have to. You want me to just upload it or something?
You're welcome to just put in the photo, but you don't have to. It was more if I had asked you to bring a photo today of something that you're even doing.
Oh, I could show you I could show you my parka. I love working on ruffs.
Awesome.
I didn't want to buy a parka. I thought I could make my own. Okay. Well,
thank you.
Nice to be here.
Thank you for being here, Margie. And I see in the chat box, a couple of folks have written, hi, Lisa from Soldotna, PE teacher, Amy from Anchorage School District, school nurse, and her photo would show her playing with her 3-year-old son, Grayson. Jocelyn, also from Barrow High School counselor, and her picture would be places to find calm. Thank you. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves? Well, if not now, feel free in the chat room. So the reason that as part of today's session is about school climate, and part of creating a school's climate is for a school's climate to be more conducive to learning has always been in schools for staff to practice self-care and wellness. And this has always been hard. But I wanted to recognize that it's been even more hard this past year. And so therefore, it's even more important for all of us to be more intentional about taking care of ourselves, because if we are able to take care of ourselves both during school and out of school, in turn, we're going to be better prepared to support our students. So as we delve into the topic of school climate this morning, which is mainly focused on how you as staff can support students, I encourage you at the same time to think about your own role and what you can do to take care of yourself. I am going to go to the next slide that my colleague Heather shared with me that I think sums this up really well. I've come to the conclusion that I am the decisive element. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. I possess tremendous power to make students' lives miserable or joyous. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. All of us, all of you here play such an important role in students' sense of feeling safe and connected in their school. And in you being able to play that role, it's how you feel as well. I know when I come into work, well, these days my work is in my house, but I still am feeding off the sounds of my family around me. And however I am feeling at that moment impacts everything else I'm doing. So what is school climate exactly? The National School Climate Center defines it as the quality and character of school life. To me, school climate makes up almost, if not everything within a school. It's how your students and you as staff feel when walking into the school, whether that school right now is happening in person or virtually. Do you feel safe and connected to these people, to what you're doing in school? Are students motivated to be in school? Are you as staff motivated to do the best that you can do to support your students? It's how So the structure, are students getting acknowledgement and feedback on how they're doing? Are they feeling challenged, motivated? How involved are their families and the rest of the community in what they're doing in school? All of that impacts. And I'll read this quote: "Positive school climate and connectedness is not a program, but a way of engaging in the world." How do we make this the foundation of all our interactions? And I would say that now, this past year through COVID, that students feeling that safe and connectedness is even more important than ever. I know that right now learning looks differently in different communities. Some districts are gone back to in-person. Some have some schools in person, some not. Down here in Juneau, there's some students in person. Others are still taking class remotely. But at the end of the day, it does not need a building, because it really comes down to relationships. Those feelings of feeling safe and connected comes down to relationships. This is a photo from my son when he was in kindergarten last year, probably the end of March, when everything changed and all of a sudden, the staff throughout the state amazingly figured out how they could support students. And so my son had a once a week kindergarten Zoom class. That kindergarten Zoom class once a week was the highlight of his week after schools had been closed, because he was able to see his peers online, hear and see the voice of his teacher. Here he is cozying up on the couch with a snuggly, just so happy and excited to be there. And now fast forward almost a year, while he's still taking, he's having school still being done remotely, the routine and structures and relationships that he's having, even through distance, are just important. So to measure many of those things that I just talked about, the Association of Alaska School Boards developed a school climate and connectedness survey in 2006 in partnership with the American Institute for Research and school districts. Many of your districts have taken this survey, either are taking it now or have at some point taken this survey. I know Anchorage School District takes the survey each year. North Slope Borough School District takes the survey each year. Kenai has taken the survey in the past, and I'm not sure what other districts are online. In 2017, we partnered with Panorama Education to really help make this survey more of a tool for districts. So if anyone has looked at survey results for your school or district, you would be familiar with Panorama Education's interactive survey platform, where you can see results over time. You can see room for improvement and strengths. You can see how schools compare to each other in your district, to the district and statewide, and real detailed of how students, staff, and families respond to each question. And we're going to get into some of that data in just a minute. There is a number of these surveys are all taken online. There's 2 student versions, grades 3 to 5, grades 6 to 12, staff survey that's open to all staff within a school, and a family survey. And in 2018, this survey became listed as a validated national tool through the National Safe and Supportive Learning Environments, which we are really proud of. This past year, 2020, which are the results that we're going to look at today, 12,457 grade 3 to 5 students, over 24,000 6th to 12th graders, 5,648 staff members, and 8,588 family members took this survey from 31 school districts. And I want to note that last year, districts identified a 2-week window to take their survey between the end of January and March. So there were some school districts when schools shut down. I think the date was around March 13th. There were some school districts that were still in the middle of taking their survey. Some of those districts opted out at that point, and others still tried to have more respondents. So speaking of which, adapting this year, yes, school districts are still taking the school climate and connectedness this survey this year, 2021. Actually, right now, we are in the middle of the statewide survey window that opened statewide January 18th and is going through the end of March. How we adapted it this year is, number one, the survey is designed for students, staff, and families to take whether or not their students are in person or remote learning. One of the very first questions is, how are you attending school right now? Or how are your students attending school right now? So they can mark either in person, hybrid, or remote. And therefore schools, once they get the results, can break out responses if they want based on how their students are attending school. Another way we're adapting this year is offering a longer survey window. Schools identified, or districts identified, 1 5-week window instead of 2 weeks. So about half of the districts taking the survey are taking it from January 18th through end of February, and then the other from February something to the end of March to widen the time to get survey responses. We also developed what we're calling COVID impact questions for students, staff, and families. So for the different components of school climate that you can look at, really pull out how students have been feeling during COVID. And we have also been able to offer a paper survey options for schools that are doing remote learning without internet. So for in some schools who are doing remote learning, like for example, North Slope Borough School Districts, I know there are some communities that families do not have internet at home. So we are able to offer paper survey options for those groups, which we are really excited about. Does anyone have any questions about the survey? Feel free to unmute and ask, or just type it in the chat box. So what I'd like to do now is just share with you some of what the survey looks like, and share with you with some of the results. Right now, this is a screenshot from the Panorama survey platform for the Alaska statewide summary. And this is a public link that you can find on our website, aasb.org. And for your schools and districts, if you're looking at your own results, it looks just like this, but instead of state summary, for example, it would say Anchorage School District, if you're looking at the district results, or if you're looking at your specific school, it would have your school name there instead of state summary. I just wanted to point out some of these pieces to give you an idea of all the things that this survey measures, and then we're going to hone in on some specific areas. So there's a number of topics, such as cultural connectedness, in which you can compare how family members respond compared to students, compared to staff. And cultural connectedness are questions. First off, that's a topic that we just introduced into the survey just a few years ago with input from the First Alaskans Institute and school districts around students' perception of their own cultural identity and how they feel the school supports their cultural identity. So you can look here at a glance statewide. Family who took this survey, 69% of family members throughout the state of Alaska responded favorably, meaning that they either strongly agreed or agreed that positively around cultural connectedness in their school, compared to 49% of students, compared to 66% of staff. And I shared this as to point out that often there are discrepancies between what students and staff had to say. Now, to go beyond that, each of the topics, you can look more in depth. So here I pulled out the topic caring adults, which are students' perceptions of their closest to adults over time. At first, you can see how results, whether or not they've changed over the years. So statewide, I see in 2015, it was 58% responded favorably overall, and it's been pretty stable. Last year, 2020 at 57%. You can also see for every topic a breakdown of how your students responded. So that's also by students' race, ethnicity, whether or not they report missing school without permission, whether or not they report speaking a language spoken at home that's not English, what their grades that they're reporting receiving, their grade level, and gender. And then you can dive even deeper for every question on this survey. You can see exactly how students or your staff, families respond, and a breakdown for groups for each of those. So for example, one question under caring adults is, at school, there is a teacher or some other adult who will miss me when I'm absent. 43% of students statewide responded favorably, meaning they either said strongly agree or agree. If you look in the answer distribution, you can see what that breakdown actually means. In addition to the strongly agree and agree options, they could also have chosen agree some, disagree, or strongly disagree. And you can see the agree some, disagree some, there's 32% of students that were in that middle category. And to me, I look at that as students didn't feel strong enough in one way or the other. And then you can see if there was any differences by grade level, gender, etc. So I wanted to share that with you to note that if your district does take the survey, if you haven't yet gotten access to the platform, please check with your school administrator to get access to it, because there's just a wealth of information that you can dive in. For this year, 2021, before we get into some of the results from last year, I just wanted to share with you the impact of COVID questions that we have for this current year. For students grades 6 to 12, during COVID-19, I feel supported by adults at my school. During COVID-19, I feel connected to other students at my school. During COVID-19, I feel overwhelmed trying to keep up with my schoolwork. During COVID-19, it is difficult for me to use the distance learning tools. That's for grades 6 to 12. For staff, during COVID-19, I feel connected to my students. During COVID-19, I feel connected to other staff at my school. During COVID-19, I feel connected to students' families. I'm confident that I can support students learning during COVID-19, and during COVID, I feel overwhelmed trying to support students in my role. So we tried to pull out we thought were the most key components of school climate so that we could pull out responses just for this year, or for the context of this year. And for family members, they're being asked during COVID, how are you feeling supported by staff at your child school? How confident are they in supporting their students' learning? How are they feeling about it? How are they thinking that their student is feeling right now about it? And are they being able to access all the tools that they need? So I'm going to pause, and then I'm to see if there are any questions before I dive into some of this year's data. Well, if any questions come up, feel free to put it in the chat box. So I pulled out the National School Climate Center, whose definition of school climate I shared earlier. They look at school climate in 3 components: school safety, external environment, and teaching and learning. And so that is how I wanted to focus in on sharing some of the results with you today. So number 1, school safety. Students, staff are asked, do you feel safe at school? I feel safe at school. So statewide in 2020, 65% of 3rd to 5th graders said, yes, I feel safe at school, compared to 62% of 6th to 12th graders who said they agreed that they felt safe in school, compared to 85% of staff members. Next is external environment, which I look at as factors that are outside of a student's control. So, for example, when a student walks into school physically, what does that environment look like? What do the hallways look like? What do the classrooms look like? What is the vibe that they're getting? So one question is, this school is a welcoming place for families. Statewide, 71% of students agreed or strongly agreed that the school was a welcoming place for families, compared to 85% of staff and 85% of families. So it was interesting to me, families and staff viewed it more positively, a bit more positively than students. Adults in this community support this school is another question that I look at under external environment. 66% of students responded that they agreed that adults in their community support their school, compared to 68% of staff, compared to 81% of families. So that was interesting, is that the family that are taking this survey are responding more favorably that adults support this school than the students and staff. Then the third component of school climate, as defined by the National School Climate Center, is teaching and learning. So I pulled out a couple of questions. First, this past year, 2020, we put in some new questions around trauma-informed schools, so specifically on whether or not staff felt that they had the skills to work in trauma-engaged strategies. So one question is, I know specific skills and strategies I can use to help students who have experienced trauma to do well in our school. 68% of staff responded favorably, so did agree or strongly agree. Another question that I pulled out from Teaching and Learning for cultural connectedness: this school uses instructional materials that reflect the cultural or ethnicity of its students. 54% of staff statewide did agree or strongly agree to that question. Phew, I just shared a lot of different information. Hopefully that's the most you'll have heard me speak today. I really want to do now is give you a chance to think about your school, your community, and thinking about those areas that we just talked about of school climate. So how we're going to do this in just a minute, Cami is going to put you all into small breakout rooms. We're a small group today, so you'll probably be just paired up with one other person. And introduce yourself. And I'd like you to share what is one thing that you're doing now to help students feel safe and connected in your school. So in just a minute, you're going to be put into a breakout room with one other person. Introduce yourself, thinking about what I just shared and the different questions and what your schools are looking like now and what school climate is all about. What is one thing that you are doing to help students feel safe and connected? And each room is going to have, I believe, 6 minutes. We're going to try for 6 minutes. And so, Cami, are you?
I am ready.
Great.
And I don't know, because I'm going to try to put us into 3 breakout rooms and hopefully that works. Otherwise I can do 2. And that's 3 to 4 people per room, but there's so many of us.
Sure.
Okay.
Everywhere.
Let's try it.
Okay. So hope you enjoy your conversations and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay. So there's a couple people that didn't go into breakout rooms.
Are you able to just move them?
So now there's just one person in one breakout room.
Okay, someone just went.
So looks like Romy's by herself.
And I see Jocelyn
Has not joined.
Are you able to? I don't know if you're able to. Jocelyn, if you're there, are you able to join your breakout room? So there's somebody by themselves. You can bring them back here and we can talk to them here.
Okay.
Or did that
Wait, nope, they went.
Okay.
Okay. I was like,
Good job. No worries. No worries. So
6 minutes.
Yeah.
So is it, should I pause the recording?
I would. I mean, some of the strategies that you heard or that you talked about that you're doing right now to support students in your school around school climate. Romy, Amy, or Margie, I think you're the 3 that I see that are still on with me. What did you talk about in your breakout room?
In our breakout room, it was kind of interesting because the person that I was paired with is in a school district as a counselor, and I'm a school nurse, and she's in a school district that is not in person, and I'm in a school district that is in person. So that was kind of an interesting, and we talked about how hard it is to stay connected over the computer when it isn't in person. Because, you know, for me being in person, I can go and talk to the students and, you know, see how they're feeling and stuff. But as a school nurse, trying to have contact with students when they were at home learning, that was really hard. And so we just talked about different things that staff does. And then also families that don't have internet and how hard that is because you're sending home paper packets and stuff, and then keeping them engaged or connected over paper is just really, really hard. So it was more about the differences. I don't think we got around to actually discussing like,
No worries.
yeah. So sorry.
No worries. It sounds like it was a good conversation.
Yeah.
That's what matters. What about you, Amy or Margie?
I just talked about showed them my classroom and because I didn't have students all year, and if we just did everything online, maybe one or two couple students on Zoom, it was terrible, not too good. It was different, challenging. But anyway, to welcome back our kids, we're getting them back on March 1st. I just showed them how I have my room open, pretty much surrounded around their culture, because the majority of my kids are Inupiat, and I know who they are and I know their families. A lot of them come from whaling families. Yeah, so I try and make my classroom to feel comfortable as much as I can. And I know it's going to be challenging working with them, but they're a good group of kids. They're really kind people.
Right. So you were focused on how you can, and when students start coming back in person, how you can make your classroom more a positive, welcoming place. Great. So will that be the first time this school year that students are back in person?
Yes, March 1st, because we hadn't had them since, my last day last year with them was March 12th. And then we had a big blizzard in the school. Everything was shut down in Barrow, because when you get these real big blizzards up here, it's white out. You can't see nothing in front of you. So everybody had to stay home. And then that was the last time I seen my poor students. And it was just a bummer. But it's going to be nice to have them back. And some of these kids are real eager to get back too, because they just love school.
Absolutely.
Where else there is to go here in Barrow? It's so cold. They love school. That's why we have such a nice big building. And then Pirarvik will be opening up. It's a place across the school where kids love basketball. They have little dribblers. I know it's going to be hard and challenging for everybody wearing a mask. So it's going to be a whole different teaching time. It's like, we've never done this before.
Yep. Amy, any thoughts, anything you want to share?
I think for me, we're back in school now with our kiddos. And I think for me, being a nurse, it's trying to make the connections one-on-one. Everything from like when they're here in my space, just taking that extra time to listen and to be there with them and to help. I have a food program that I do where I send food home with kids, and that's a big connection. It goes home every weekend. They get a bag, and I've got some this year. I'm going to let some of the older kids kind of help pack the bags, so that'll be something that kind of teamwork and just, I don't know, I think more that bond and connection building. And so I have that, and then the little things with like in the hallway, when I see the kids in the hallway, being able to like gesture to them and the little finger waves or the little, air hugs or something to let them know that I see them. So those are my little ways.
Those are great ways. And, those little things that you may not think make such a difference, totally do. I mean, students notice when you usually make that finger wave and all of a sudden one day you don't. You know, they're going to know that. Those little things are so important. So I'm going to go to my next slide. So I know some of you were starting to, so some of those things that you just talked about, like the finger wave, so that is something that's not necessarily used across all staff, right? But as a way for you to greet students. And so other staff in your school may have other ways that they're doing that to build connection. And so I wanted to, you know, the last conversation was about you reflecting on your individual, like what you do or could do individually to support school climate, and take a step back, or like a broader picture is what strategies are there or could there be for your whole school or all your staff to use, and what would that mean? And so to share an example, this is a tool, Mood Meter. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It was shared with me by Heather Coulahan, who's our social emotional learning coordinator at AASB. I'm just sharing this as an example that I know a number of schools use. If only one teacher in a school is trained on this and is just teaching this to one group of students, how effective is that compared to all staff being trained on Mood Meter and all students using it? So for example, Amy could be walking, you know, in her school, seeing a student not looking so good. How are you doing? I'm feeling kind of blue today, knowing exactly what that means, that student is on the, you know, left corner feeling low energy. So if everyone had that same language, it just builds up to working together to support school climate. Another example is morning meetings. My son, he's in first grade, attending by Zoom, and every class at Harborview does a morning meeting, even on Zoom. And it's just this part of the routine so that when the student moves on to the next grade level, they still know how their start of their day is going to happen. And some of those routines are, you know, they're just as important if you're doing it remotely as in person. So when we talk about expanding practices, not just from individual school-wide, those are, you know, we call that school-wide practices, which are referring to those routines, structures, and strategies that everyone agrees upon and is used across the school throughout the day. And they make it clear that everyone in the school and the school community has a role and responsibility for creating a safe and respectful learning environment. So it's not just their nurse's role or the teacher's role to work on this, it's everyone. And so, for example, if a school's deciding to use Mood Meter, train everybody on that. Train the cooks in the kitchen, the secretary in the office, everybody on that to work together. And this information comes from the Transforming Schools Trauma Engaged Toolkit that the Association of Alaska School Boards worked on with the Alaska Department of Education, which is a great resource for lots of different specific strategies school-wide. So any thoughts on, have you seen any school-wide strategies in your school to address school climate? And if so, what? Or district-wide? Any school-wide practices that you are seeing in your school or district to address school climate, or that could be implemented in your school or district that you may be thinking about?
I haven't seen any yet.
Mm-hmm.
No, nothing yet. The admin, we have two principals here. We had three at the beginning, and then The one got called over to central office. The two here, no, they've been pretty quiet. They're trying to, I guess, maybe create, I guess they're reviewing the yellow guidelines for when kids come back to school, because we hadn't had students here yet, but I haven't heard anything yet lately. Everybody's like been busy in their rooms working.
Right.
When we have staff Zoom meetings, and no, the last staff meeting was real upsetting last Friday. A lot of teachers got upset. It's like crazy. It's this crazy COVID thing everybody's going through. It's like, you know how students are feeling it too, you know, they're feeling kind of, even families, everybody. This COVID thing, pandemic really affected people. Makes some
Absolutely.
people crazy. I mean, that's what
It's impacted.
you know, it depends where you're at and where you're at. And up here, I guess everybody's just like making it going day by day by day. I haven't heard nothing really. I just so used to it. I mean, up here, you just like to have to just do what's best for you and
That's
survive
true.
and just be here, just be strong for the students.
Yep.
Keeping in touch with the kids is what keeps me going, and talking to their families, and moms will message me, so, and getting their emails. So that makes me feel, I guess, being a teacher up here with no kids in my room right now, and those other people are over there. Sorry to say that, but I'm telling you the truth. The only people that keep me going are just my students I'm keeping in touch with, and moms that message me. I give, you know, really good. They're open about messaging me, and then talking to good close friends up here. They're the ones who keep me going, and I'm just here for the kids. Never mind nobody else over there. And then learning to take care of myself. And I'm just ready. I'm just looking forward to the kids coming back and helping them out the best way I can.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, everything you said, it all comes down to relationships. So by you maintaining those relationships, even though your kids are not in person, but still being in connection with them and their parents, that's going to be huge for when they come back to school soon. That is like the foundation for school climate and everything else. Yeah. Any thoughts, Romy?
I liked what Margie said about using culture in her classroom. I thought that was pretty awesome. I'm in the Matsu borough, so we have, I don't know, there's a lot of different cultures that kind of come together. But I know here at school, at Sioux Valley at the high school, I'm at 3 different schools, so I travel around, but at the high school, they did Sioux Valley masks. So we all kind of are, you know, wearing the same masks to say, you know, we're all part of the same school. But yeah, the connectedness, I guess that's not something that I've thought about in a long time. Because as the nurse, I'm very focused on COVID and, you know, who can come to school and how long they're out, and, you know, all the other stuff and the investigation with public health. And yeah, so that is an interesting, I'm gonna have to think on it. I'm not sure I have any great ideas right now, but I do like the idea of culture, using that. That's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to share with you some resources before I forget, and then give you time to ask any questions if you have. If you're interested in the School Climate Connectedness Survey, you can go to our website, aasb.org. And so Matsu, years ago, they took this particular school climate survey, but they have it in a number of years. If you haven't yet looked at the Transforming Schools Framework and Toolkit, highly encourage you to go to that as a resource. The link is here, education.alaska.gov/trauma-engage-schools. I usually have it on my desk. Oh, I do have it on my desk. Oh, you can't really see it. beautiful. Anyway, there's beautiful graphics and drawings in there throughout each chapter. National School Climate Center is a great resource for just general school climate stuff, as well as the National Center on Safe Supportive Learning Environments. And there's a listserv that you can sign up there to get news on what's going on around school climate at the federal level and different ideas and strategies, etc. Any questions or thoughts about school climate, the survey, or anything that we've talked about?
With the school climate and connectedness survey, did everybody across Alaska take that, or just certain school districts? I missed if you said that.
Oh yeah, it's a voluntary survey. So every school district is invited to take the survey each year, but it's voluntary. So not all school districts do, but the majority do. Usually it's around 30-ish school districts that take the survey each year. Yep. Cami, do you have any questions or thoughts or?
No, I think just encouraging everyone to go and check out the resources that are available, and that the Transforming Schools, the framework, is available in print copy as well. So if you are interested in that, please reach out. You can reach out to me at the department, and I'll put my email in the chat box, but we can send those out to schools. And then the toolkit, it is a very new resource. They just launched it, I believe in September, and they did what was called a Toolkit Tuesday. And so there's recordings of each of the different sections that they did a webinar on. And so I'm happy to connect you with those resources as well. And all of that's available on the Department of Education website, and I believe the AASB website, but we can put those links in the chat.
Great. Great. Well, that's what I had to share with you today. Thank you, Margie and Romy, for staying on for this session. I hope you're walking away with some insights or some new ahas about what you can do in your role to support school climate, both in Barrow and in the Mat-Su.